Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates post-game live after the Warriors clinch a second straight victory over the New Orleans Pelicans. Another impressive result for a shorthanded Golden State team who, after yesterday's win over Pels, come back out with a, 104-89 victory here on Wednesday night. Welcome to the live stream. If you're here, then please let me know what you liked from tonight's performance, what you didn't like, what you want to see more of moving forward. The Warriors now 4-1 through 5 games and will now head on a 5-game road trip, which will be difficult. They've got the Houston Rockets straight up, a bit more of an easier game against the Detroit Pistons, although they're not too much of a pushover right now, it must be said. And then 3 very difficult games against the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Boston Celtics, and the Oklahoma City Thunder, which you'd imagine the Warriors will be underdogs in each of those. But staying with today's game, the 15-point win, again, backing up yesterday's 18-point victory. Coming into these 2 back-to-back games, I thought without Steph Curry, without Andrew Wiggins, without DeAnthony Melton, the Warriors would have been doing a good job to win one of these 2 matchups. Instead, they go 2 for 2. And I think that really makes up for the fact they lost going back to Sunday's game against the Clippers, where you would have hoped they should have won that game, and they didn't. So now 4-1 through 5 games, having seen Steph and Wiggs sit these last 2, that is a pretty good result, it must be said. And to win these 2 games as comfortably as they did, particularly after falling behind by 20 yesterday early in the second quarter, is just an unreal result. A really, really good couple of performances for the Golden State Warriors. There's only one place I can start here in this game, and it tops everything else that we saw. And that was a vintage defensive masterclass of a performance from Draymond Green, who I would like to know, someone needs to ask him how much film he watched earlier today on that performance against Zion Williamson last night on Tuesday, because it was a complete contrast to what we saw today. He had some reasonable defensive plays on Zion yesterday, but today was just an unbelievable. Draymond is no longer vying for Defensive Player of the Year titles, and the fact that he will only end up finishing his career with 1 DPOY award is a joke, really, because he's the best defender of his generation, I believe. And he may no longer be vying for those type of awards throughout the course of a regular season, but he is still capable of guarding guys and producing defensive performances which are unparalleled across the league. There are very, very few players that can go and guard Zion Williamson, oftentimes one-on-one. He got a lot of help at the rim at times today. We understand that. But a lot of the times it was just one-on-one, and he was doing everything defensively against Zion, keeping him to 12 points. What was he? 5 of 20 shooting from the floor, 25% for a guy that lives on the interior. Zion took 1 3-point attempt in this game. Everything of his comes around the rim, around the paint. And so to keep him to 25% shooting from the floor, Draymond has 5 blocks in this game, and it wasn't just Zion either. He had a late one there on a Brandon Ingram jump shot. Brandon Ingram's nearly 6'10". Draymond's closing out, blocking his shot. This guy, you want to know why. A lot of people just, I don't know, they get sick of Draymond, and understandably so for what we've seen over recent seasons, going back to the Jordan Poole hit, and then all the stuff last season, obviously, with the 2 separate suspensions that really cost the Warriors a playoff position. And you can argue, and I'm not necessarily going to argue against you if you say that, Draymond Green's ruined the last 2 Warriors seasons. I'm not going to necessarily argue against that. You can make that argument quite viably. But if you want to know why the Warriors are willing to deal with all the stuff, all the negative stuff that Draymond Green puts them through in terms of the extracurricular stuff on the floor and off the floor for that matter, in terms of the Jordan Poole incident, all the stuff going back to 2016 NBA Finals getting suspended, which we could argue whether he should have or not until the cows come home. But if you want to know why the Warriors are willing to deal with all this stuff, this extra stuff, it's because of games like this one where he wins you the game. He just legitimately, the Warriors do not win that game without Draymond Green. And I spoke about after the game against the Clippers, after Steph was injured, where we knew he was going to miss some period of time. And I said, like, this is a really important period for Draymond Green. Not only his production as a player, but leadership wise as well. And I just thought everything he did in this game was exceptional, from what he did defensively to what he did offensively to what he did from a leadership standpoint. It was, as I said, exceptional. Could not have been a better Draymond Green performance. And there are very few, if any, defenders in the league that can keep Zion Williamson under wraps like that and completely blanket him. Mitch Anderson says, first comment here, how good is our defense looking right now? What are your thoughts on our chances at a ring this year? I'm not going to go too far on winning a ring. Like, I know we've been very, very lucky as Warrior fans to go through the 4 titles in a decade, and that's been absolutely unbelievable. But having missed the playoffs last season, and given I support other teams in other sports around the world, I know how difficult it is to win a championship. And so I'm not basing this season on the expectation of winning a title. I want to get back to the playoffs. I want the Warriors to get back to the playoffs first and foremost. And then from there, we can kind of reassess where we're at. But really right now, it's almost one game at a time. It's as cliche as that may sound, it's one game at a time. And I'm not necessarily going to overreact even to being 4-1 right now, because I sat here after the Jazz and Trailblazers game thinking we could have been 5-0. So I think 4-1 is probably the minimum we needed to be at, albeit Steph then got injured. So I am slightly surprised that we were able to win both these games against the Pelicans so comfortably. But 4-1 through 5 games, a pretty easy schedule, it must be said, with getting the 2 worst teams in the West, getting a Clippers team, I mean, you lost to them, but that was a very winnable game, and then having these 2 Pelicans games. The test is now going to be this 5-game road trip where you're going to have, particularly the last 3, you're going to be right up against the wall in those ones. And then that really makes the first 2 even more important when you got to play the Rockets and the Pistons. And you're probably still going to be without Steph, and fingers crossed Wiggs is back. He was kind of a game time decision, questionable, warmed up, obviously didn't feel right, wasn't a goer in this one. So that's going to be the test. And if the Warriors can get through, like if the Warriors can beat Houston, beat Detroit, and then, I don't know, get one of the 3 against the Cavs, the Celtics, and the Thunder, if they get one of 3 and be competitive in the other 2, then you know what? I'm going to be pretty happy. Be pretty happy with that. That would mean they're 7-3 after 10 games. And given that 5-game road trip, I think that would be a great result. Griffin Gamble is in the chat as well. Griffin's a colleague of mine at Blue Man Hoops. So impressed so far with guys stepping up. I would have been happy with 1 win between these 2 Pelicans games. We got both. Brutal road stretch coming up. Let's see how it goes. Yeah, I'm with you there. Very impressive 2 performances to get both games. And as I just spoke about, the road trip is going to be a big test for the Warriors, because it could quickly, like we saw with the Clippers game and the negativity that came after that based on the result and based on Steph's ankle, and then the start of the Pelicans game yesterday. And then since then, it's all been positive again, and there's great vibes again around the Warriors. But things across an 82-game season, I think it's pretty important to try and stay as balanced and level-headed as we can, because it's so easy to ride the wave of emotions up and down. Like, there is going to be, it's an 82-game season. There's going to be so many positives, so many negatives, periods where the team's playing well, periods where the team's playing poorly, times where we've already seen this season, times where the team's fully healthy, and then where the team's really struggling with injuries. So I try and keep pretty balanced and level-headed on this, as much as a fan, like, you can't help but ride the wave of emotions as well. Back to Mitch's comment just on the defense. It is like the fact you were able to keep the Pelicans. I mean, yesterday was a good defensive performance, and the result was particularly ignited by the defensive intensity in the second quarter, where the Warriors just turned things up, and that allowed them to get out and transition, get some easy opportunities, and really got them back into that game before kind of the 3-point shooting took over in the second half. But the fact you're able to do that and then back it up with, and keeping the Pelicans to 89 points on less than 37% shooting today, and doing so, just think about this, doing so without two of your primary perimeter defenders, your primary perimeter defender in Andrew Wiggins, doing so without DeAnthony Melton, who's probably your second best perimeter defender. And then maybe Gary Payton II is still your best perimeter defender, but he plays limited minutes off the bench, and he plays I know he played less than 6 minutes when the game was on the line. I think he might have played a couple at the end. He played 7 minutes and 19 seconds, but I think a minute 25 of that was the last minute 25 when both end of the benches were on. So to do that, to keep the Pelicans to 89 points without Wiggins, Melton, and GP2 basically not playing, I think just goes to show you the versatility of this Warriors team defensively. And as I said in the post-game live yesterday, the fact that you can have all these guys come out and no one's really a defensive liability. And if they are a little bit, then at least they try. And that's half the issue sometimes with these poor defenders around the league, is maybe physically they're not up to it. Maybe physically they are. But again, across an 82-game regular season, to get players individually to buy in to not only a defensive game plan, but being switched on and putting in the effort, I think that's half the battle sometimes. And so the Warriors over these last two games, and for pretty much the whole season so far, you cannot fault the defensive intensity really whatsoever. And they've just got a lot of personnel that are good defenders as well. And that's led by Draymond's performance today, which was I'm watching that thinking, who else can do this? Now people can do it in other ways. We see guys like Wemby and Chet. They're just so long, and that allows them to block so many shots and be legitimate rim protectors. But there is no one else. I'm not sure there's anyone else in NBA history who's 6'6" and can protect the rim and protect the paint like Draymond Green does, while also chasing out to guys on the perimeter, guarding guys on the perimeter, blocking jump shots. It's unreal. And again, this is why the Warriors put up with and deal with all the other stuff that comes with Draymond, because of performances like this. Game Ref 2P says Stackhouse is the real deal. Yep. So he's the defensive-minded coordinator right now, having come in. Terry Stott's obviously the offensive-minded coordinator, and he's got a lot of big positives said about him so far with how the Warriors are playing offensively and how they're kind of getting back into the swing of things from a three-point shooting perspective. And, I mean, both of those guys, I think they've reinvigorated Steve Kerr a little bit more as well. And I think having guys like, Kenny Atkinson had been a main assistant to Kerr over the last 3 years, and him coming in 21, 22, that really helped the Warriors win a championship. But I do think there's something to be said for, having the same group of guys, not only from a playing standpoint, but also from maybe even more so from a coaching standpoint. Things can get a little bit stale, and you need to bring guys in who have new ideas, who have been elsewhere around the league and can bring other ideas to your organization. And Terry Stott's obviously a very accomplished head coach who, led the Trailblazers to, I think, 7 or 8 playoff series in his 8 or 9 years as head coach. So there's a lot of experience there now. And, it's been a fantastic start to the season. There's no doubt about that. Moving on from Draymond's performance a little bit and some of your comments there. Other things to take away from this game. I mean, everyone, again, it was kind of a team-orientated performance on both ends of the floor. Again, the Warriors being able to keep the Pelicans to less than 37% shooting. And then offensively, another 6 players in double figures. I'm actually looking. I think I'm looking. No, I'm not looking. Sorry. I thought I was looking at yesterday's game. I am looking at today's game. Just first of all, in the starting lineup. So the expected starting lineup that I thought was going to be the case after yesterday's game. So Steve goes to Pods, Lindy Waters the third starting, Moses Moody, Draymond Green, Trace Jackson Davis. And then obviously Kuminga still coming off the bench. Now I would have probably started JK over TJD, but this is why Steve's coach, because that resulted as the right decision. TJD was hugely, hugely impactful, which was great to see after a couple of quieter games against the Clippers and then in the first meeting against the Pelicans yesterday. So he goes for 15 points, 9 rebounds, 7 of 9 shooting from the floor. And I think it's always if TJD is getting double-digit points, that's always a pretty good sign for the Warriors, because it usually means the ball's moving really well, and they're therefore finding really easy shots at the rim with him. I don't know. That's something. It's something I'd monitor moving forward. Like if you're watching games and Trace Jackson Davis is getting to double digits, I'd like to see at the end of the season what the Warriors' record is when TJD scores 10 plus points, because I imagine it would be pretty good. Gamer F2P says, all right, I think we'll be all right in the next games. The biggest test will be OKC since they played hard defense like us. Not worried about the Celtics. The Celtics lost today in an overtime game against the Indiana Pacers. That was an incredible comeback from the Celtics to take it to overtime, and they had all the momentum, yet ended up losing the game 135-132. They've had a couple of like close-ish games. They were obviously really impressive on opening night against the Knicks. Since then, they were pretty close against the Pistons, who obviously aren't great, but they're actually fighting pretty hard at the moment. So I mean, the Celtics at TD Garden, that's going to be a massive challenge, and so not worried about the Celtics. It's really going to come to, like, we need Steph back for that one to have any chance. I would have thought otherwise. It's probably going to be a long night. Other than that, yeah, we could see, hopefully, as you say, OKC is going to be a big test. They're now atop the Western Conference, 5-0. The Warriors alone, second in the Western Conference, 4-1, albeit there's a couple of teams, 3-1, who have the chance to go 4-1 tomorrow, I believe. So we'll wait and see. The Thunder, there's very little flaws around their team. Maybe their depth is getting a little bit stretched at the moment with a couple of injuries. Obviously, Isaiah Hartenstein's out for 5-6 weeks. But, we'll have plenty of time to talk about those matchups against the Celtics, the Thunder, and the like. Back onto this game, though. Trace, as I was speaking about, a really, really good performance from him. Really impactful on both ends of the floor, like had that huge block on Alvarado in the third quarter, protecting the paint there, and then also obviously finishing at the rim, where I think he's now 22 of 27 from the floor overall for the season. And again, I just like to keep an eye on when TJD scores 10 plus points, what's the Warriors' record? Because I reckon it'd be pretty good. Again, it just kind of showcases that the ball is moving pretty well when you're able to get TJD these open looks at the rim. So just something to monitor there. Outside of that, the Warriors really dominated on the interior with TJD and Draymond. Just going back to their defense for a little bit, it was pretty obvious that they came into this one. I don't know if Draymond really wanted just to have a crack back at Zion. He's never, Draymond's never backing down from a challenge. And I think he might have been a little bit hurt by Zion going for 31 points on Tuesday. And so, again, a defensive masterclass from him, but it was clear that the Warriors kind of said, all right, we're gonna let Draymond take Zion, try and beat him in that one-on-one matchup. Obviously have guys help at the rim when possible, but with that matchup and then with Brandon Ingram, whenever Ingram gets the ball, we're basically going to try and double him as much as we can and force the ball out of his hands. And I think what you've seen from Brandon Ingram at times over the course of his career, and I directly go back to the playoffs last season where Zion was out, so that made things even more difficult. But in the playoffs last season against the Thunder were very meticulous in throwing double teams at trying to force as much pressure on Brandon Ingram as possible. And he didn't really handle it that well. He couldn't score. The field goal percentage wasn't great. And he's not necessarily the greatest decision maker or passer the world's ever seen. I'm not saying he's bad, but he's not great. And so I think the Warriors made a very specific decision to say, okay, we're going to hope that Draymond can eradicate Zion from the game. And we're, as a team, going to try and bottle up Ingram by basically doubling him as much as we can, by trying to apply as much pressure to him as we can. And you know what? He can kick out of those double teams. And if other guys can make shots, then good on them. And I think that was signified by the fact, Jordan Hawkins goes for a game-high 23 points in this one and played pretty well. But you know what? He shoots what was he in the end? 9 of 21 from the floor, 4 of 14 from three-point range. So it wasn't as if Jordan Hawkins just completely lit it up. Yes, he had 23 points, but it was on 21 shots. It wasn't overly efficient. Jose Alvarado hit some shots, but he's never a guy he's not going to go for 20, 25 and beat you. So I think, the Warriors played a bit of a risky game there by, saying, okay, we're going to double Ingram on occasions and, let other guys try and beat us. And they got away with it because, Jordan Hawkins is a young player and he's going to shoot a lot, but it wasn't overly efficient. And Jose Alvarado, not much of an offensive player. So good decision making, I think, from the Warriors defensively, and that kind of ploy to try and take Ingram out after he also went for 30 on Tuesday night, and of course Draymond on Zion. So defensively, just an exceptional performance from the Warriors overall. Back onto some individual guys. I'm hopping from stuff in and out here, but I'm sure that's all good. Just noting down some thoughts here, going through the other things. Moses Moody, 8 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. Thought he was reasonably active, just 3 of 9 shooting, though, 2 of 6 from three-point range. Lindy Waters, the third, played nearly 30 minutes, only had 3 points, 1 of 5 shooting, all from three-point range. Look, certainly not the 21-point performance we saw on Tuesday night, but that's okay. Like, he's not going to do that every game. And I think there's still, even despite, 3 points in 30 minutes, 1 of 5 shooting, I think there's still a decision to be made from Steve Kerr on what he does with the rotation moving forward here, and whether Lindy Waters the third should actually get minutes when Steph, Melton, Wiggins are back. Like, that's a genuine rotation headache for him, and I feel for Steve because this stuff's really, really difficult. And unless you're winning every game, like, there's going to be concerns and there's going to be critiquing from fans, and that's just the reality of it when you've got 13 plausible guys that can play. I don't know. It's difficult. You see, like, off the bench, so Loon only plays 8.5 minutes, which, he's played really well over the last couple of games. So 8.5 minutes is a bit of a surprise. Like, I sat here 24 hours ago thinking, Loon might have gone past TJD in terms of, like, which center's going to play more minutes. And now it's like, oh no, Trace plays just over 20 today and Loon plays 8.5. Went to Kyle Anderson a little bit more, 15.5 minutes nearly for him, 10 points, perfect 4 of 4 shooting, also added 4 rebounds, 2 assists. I mean, he's just a really versatile player. What else can you say, really? You kind of know what he's going to provide when he's out there. Yes, the lack of 3-point shooting, the lack of spacing is going to be a concern at times and means that he doesn't play so much in some games, and then he plays more games in others. We understand that. He's going to be on the edge of the rotation probably for the entire season, but he's a proven veteran at this point. You know what he's going to give you. Shivansh, I hope I've pronounced that right, says, never sleep on TJD again. I just want to, I had a mate, I'm going to read a message that a mate said to me or sent to me during the game. He said, is TJD the best contract in the NBA? Because I've been huge on this, that Trace Jackson-Davis signed a 4-year deal with the Warriors at $7.8 million or $7.6 million. I think he's on over the course of his 4 years. And I think there's other guys on rookie contracts that are better contracts in the NBA that are having more impact than TJD. But can we just take a second again to remind ourselves that this guy's on less than $2 million a season average for the life of his 4-year contract, of which this is the start of the second. And the Warriors also picked up the 3rd-year option, obviously, on Pods. And so to have those two guys under contract here for the next nearly 3 seasons, like, this is the start of their 2nd year, and there's still 2 more years to come after this. I mean, like, that's just so valuable. It cannot be underestimated how valuable that is in the day and age of, the new CBA and the first and second tax apron. To have 2 guys like that who can come out, one of them plays 38 minutes, over 38 minutes, nearly has a triple-double, and then the other nearly has a double-double in just over 20 minutes. I mean, that's just so important. Splashes Clay, any thoughts on a collab with Athletic Alchemy? I do check out a bit of his work. Yeah, I'd certainly be interested. We'll see if we can make that happen. Says Bronny James is the best contract. I mean, he's on a similar deal to TJD. I'm not sure the Lakers should have been given Bronny a 4-year contract, that's for sure. But TJD, my goodness, unbelievably good deal for the Warriors. And huge credit to Mike Dunleavy Jr., who continues to do great work on the roster in terms of TJD and Pods, getting Lindy Waters the third for basically nothing. Milton, Buddy, like, look at Buddy Hield. Look at his contract right now. 4 years, less than $10 million, and he's averaging 20 points a game. Has another 21 points in this one. Didn't shoot the ball overly well. 8 of 19, 4 of 12. Still really effective though, and important, particularly when Steph's out. Like, you need Buddy's 3-point shooting, and he was really good again. So I mean, the Warriors have really got this kind of payroll situation sorted now. Now, going back to the first comment from Mitch in terms of thoughts on chances of winning a ring, this depth, the Warriors payroll is in an excellent position. But I do think at some point you need to, as I spoke about yesterday, you do probably need to make a 3-for-1, 4-for-1 trade where you get that second star, because come playoff time, if the Warriors can get there, I think they're going to need that second guy, that second go-to scorer alongside Steph, because obviously come that time you do away with 10-man rotations in the playoffs, let alone 12, 13-man rotations that Steve's thinking about at the moment. So I think come playoff time, it's going to be more important to have another star player, and whether the Warriors can get that or not, we'll wait and see. But I think that's still an avenue that I would go down. Now, again, as I spoke about yesterday, who that is, like who you involve in a trade or not, I don't know. But some of these guys are going to have value given the contracts they're on, and of course the Warrior young players. TJD could have easily been a late first-round pick. He's an immediate contributor. Shavant shares. Yeah, well, it's an interesting situation, because I think a couple of mock drafts had him, late first, early second round. But as kind of, I mean, the whole Bronny thing was huge, obviously on draft day when the Lakers not the Lakers, but Rich Paul as his agent and Clutch Sports were so adamant, reportedly, to rival teams not to take Bronny, to allow the Lakers to get him at 55. And it kind of goes underrated how the Warriors got TJD, because there's some similar stuff going on there with the fact that TJD's agent is Mike Dunleavy Jr.'s brother, and that by the sounds of it, from not necessarily reporting, but it's been speculated, I suppose, that TJD's manager, again, Mike Dunleavy Jr.'s brother, was telling teams, okay, if you're not going to give him a guaranteed contract, then we don't want you to select him, because we've got the Warriors at 57 basically, ready to give him a guaranteed contract. And so please don't take him, essentially, which is very similar to the Bronny situation. And this is the kind of stuff that happens in the second round, where a lot of second round picks obviously don't get guaranteed deals. They're either on two-way contracts, or they're only on, two-year contracts rather than 4, all this kind of stuff. And so these are the type of things that can happen. And a guy like TJD, no one can look back at that and think, I mean, everyone looks back and thinks, how is he taking it 57? But this is how these things kind of work. And, he was a 4-year college player. He's already 24 years old. So I think he's a lot closer to his prime than what most second-year players are. But that doesn't mean, like, if he just is this guy, then you've got this guy on an unbelievable contract for the next 2 9/10 of a season. So it's an unbelievable result. Talking of the second-year guys, Pods nearly had his first triple-double. I've been waiting for it. I've been thinking since early last season, like, this guy's a legitimate. I mean, didn't he come into the league saying that, hey, I'm a triple-double threat? And he nearly had one today, 13 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. They just took a rebound off him. I swear he had 9, and then that one in the fourth quarter where Javonte Green kind of undercut him a bit, and then he had that hard fall. I thought that was his 10th rebound for a double-double. And anyway, it turns out he only has 8, 7 assists. I really like the maturity of those two guys in TJD and Pods. It's just unbelievable for second-year players. And again, the fact that Steve can throw those guys out for, 38 minutes for Pods, just over 20 for TJD, and be comfortable with it. It's truly incredible. So shout out to Pods. Like, the shooting wasn't there again, 5 of 15, 2 of 7. I think the 3-point shot is going to be what's really important for him, and the scoring in general, because, we see, not all of us necessarily, but the Warriors and he himself sees, his future as an all-star caliber player. You cannot be an all-star caliber player in this league unless you're averaging 20-plus points a game. And does Brandon Pajemski fulfill me with confidence right now of ever being capable of averaging 18 to 20 points a game in his career? I'm not sure about that. I don't think so. Like, again, I look at today, as I mentioned yesterday, he takes 15 field goal attempts, second on the team behind Buddy Hield. Do I want Pods right now to be the second leading guy from a field goal attempts perspective? No, not really. Now, obviously, that doesn't happen normally. And, he'll go back to being more of a role player, I suppose, in terms of scoring the ball once Steph and Wiggs come back. But even still, I don't necessarily love him being the second leading field goal attempt guy on the team behind Buddy Hield. Kuminga, 6 of 12 today, just over 27 minutes. Played well again. I thought fourth quarter was really, really good from him. And again, a pretty mature performance. It could have easily gone sideways or south after the benching yesterday. So he's had a really strong bounce back or response from that with his two best games of the season. I thought some of his stuff in the fourth quarter, man, he was owning Ingram. Like he was taking the Ingram matchup on both ends. And like he was guarding him really well. And then on the other end, like he was basically looking at Ingram like a toothpick and saying, well, you might have length, but you got no muscle to you whatsoever. I'm just going to put you in the basket. And he did that a couple of times. So you'd argue he won that matchup, particularly in the fourth quarter. So credit to JK for his response over the last two games here. It's been really good to see. And I think, I don't know, I read Slater's report after yesterday's game, and he kind of said that, Steve was wanting to try out the starting lineup for at least 10 games. And obviously Steph's injury and Wiggs' injury to a degree as well changed that. I'll be interested now to see like Wiggs back. I wouldn't expect JK to rejoin Wiggins in the starting lineup when Wiggs returns. But I think when Steph returns, and if they can have that same starting five available to them, I think Steve still views Steph as, okay, he's such an offensive force, such a threat from a spacing perspective by himself, that maybe I can still get away with that starting lineup that he was rolling with. So I wouldn't be surprised once Steph and Wiggs are back if Steve does go back to a Steph, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond, TJD starting five. Because 3 games probably isn't enough sample size, I don't think, to say definitively that it doesn't work or definitively that it does work. And I think, I'm not sure what the numbers were. I know after the first 2 games, they were like +8 in net rating. So it was solid, but that was actually not great compared to what other lineups were doing in those 2 blowout victories by a combined 77 points. So I wouldn't be surprised by that. So JK kind of he's just got to stick with it, really. And in the meantime, while he's coming off the bench, continuing to do what he's done over the last 2 games. And I'm pretty confident that he'll be back in the starting lineup before too long. A few other comments here. H. Quee, I'm going to go with. I guess Drake a profit because we're going back-to-back. Lol, good 2 wins against the same team. Yep, let's. That'd be great to get another title. And yeah, good 2 wins in a row against the Pels, who, I don't know, some of these teams like around the West, you expect them to be in a pretty similar situation to the Warriors in terms of really battling for a play-in tournament spot, and to win 2 games specifically against the Pelicans and getting them at a good time as well, it must be said. Yes, Steph and Wiggins out. So whenever Steph and Wiggins out, doesn't matter what opponent you come up against, getting back-to-back wins like the Warriors did is fantastic. But we also do have to acknowledge, which I haven't yet over half an hour into this, that the Pelicans were missing Trey Murphy III and DeJounte Murray over both games, and then today also missing CJ McCollum and Herb Jones, right? So there's 4 incredibly key guys that are all pretty much playing 25-plus minutes for the Pelicans. And so, again, that goes down to, when the Warriors come to this game defensively, they're throwing all their attention at Zion and BI because, when those guys are flipping passes to the outside, it's like, okay, this is not CJ McCollum, a deadly 3-point shooter. It's Jose Alvarado. It's Jordan Hawkins, who can be a deadly 3-point shooter, but he's young and inexperienced. So that made it a little bit easier for the Warriors to obviously hone all their attention onto Zion and BI. Anything else from this one? Not particularly. I thought Slow-Mo played well. Buddy didn't shoot the ball great, but was reasonable. GP2 didn't play too much. Yeah, I think that's about it. As I said, the Warriors now go on this 5-game road trip. If you've got anything else quickly that you want to state in the comment section, let me know and I'll read it out. But otherwise, Warriors now go on this 5-game road trip. Couple of days off before facing the Rockets on Saturday. So that'll be a tough matchup because the Rockets, young team, plenty of talent. Jalen Green, Alperen Şengün, 2 really good young players who obviously got their 4th-year extensions done before the deadline. Samil says, Kuminga, has he done enough to lock down the starting job when Wiggs, Curry come back? No, he hasn't done enough, but would I be willing to try it out again if I was Steve? Yes, because, again, 3 games isn't enough sample size. And I think I think it's worth, like, I still view Jonathan Kuminga as a real high upside piece for this team who we were speaking about whether they can win a championship or not. Their capacity to do that, I think, still comes down to JK unless they're to make a trade. And so you really need to find out. Like, this is fourth year. The Warriors have been really patient with this, probably too patient. And if they continue down this road where it's like uncertain role, uncertain future with the team, then you're just going to back yourself into a corner where you've got really not much wiggle room, because, another team will come after him in restricted free agency and offer, a $25, $30 million per year deal. And then if you're the Warriors, what are you going to do? Are you going to match that and say, oh, well, we're not really sure about his role. We're still not sure if he's a starter yet or not, but, we can't lose him for nothing. So we're going to, give him that $25, $30 million a season? Or are you going to let him walk and say, well, we've just wasted our time here and we're getting nothing back for him? And, maybe there's still the potential that another team can unlock him and he develops into an all-star, which would be an absolute nightmare. So if you get down to that position in restricted free agency, then you've got a bit of a concern. That's why it's kind of the onus is on the Warriors to find out and do something here with Jonathan Kuminga over the remainder of this season. And, preferably before the mid-season trade deadline, because if you decide that, hey, we don't think he's a part of our future, or we don't want to pay him what he's projected to get in restricted free agency, then you better move him before the mid-season deadline. Otherwise, again, you're not going to let him walk in restricted free agency for nothing. You cannot have that. Like, you'd have to get some value for him now, right? So the Warriors need to decide. And I think there was someone in the comments after yesterday's game, after the video was published on YouTube. In fact, I might try and let me just get that up quickly, because I thought it was a really fair comment to make. I'm just going to get this up quickly after yesterday's game. And credit to this person, because it was a really fair argument. Comes from Virginia Clemens 9237. I don't understand all the Kuminga excuses. It always sounds like we're talking about a petulant child. Oh, he's being benched. Is he going to be able to perform, or is he going to sulk and waste his time on the court? What is this? Is he a pro or what? For all the others, it's keep working, your time will come. But for Kuminga, it's like he should be given the keys to the kingdom. If he thinks he's worth so much more than the Dubs are offering him, he'd better start showing he actually is. So I completely agree with this comment. Right, like I think this is a very fair statement that this person has made on YouTube. But in answering it, I would say, like, when he says or he or she, whoever it is, says for all the others, it's keep working, your time will come. But for Kuminga, it's like you should be given the keys to the kingdom. I think in regard to that, it's because I think he has the talent and the potential to get the keys to the keys to the kingdom at some point. Right, I think he has the talent and the potential for that, as none of the other Warrior young guys do. Like, Moses Moody's never going to be the best player on a playoff team. Trace never going to be the best player on a playoff team. Pod's very, very unlikely to ever be the best player on a playoff team. Right, I actually still think Kuminga has that potential and that upside. Now, some people don't, and that's fair enough. But for me, when this person is making this comment, I'm reading it thinking, yes, I agree with you to a point, but here's the difference between JK and the other young talent on this roster, right? And that's why it's a bit more of a unique situation where, as I said before, the Warriors need to find out and resolve what they're doing with this guy before it's too late and they're really, in a corner with very little options in terms of what they can do. Just a couple of more comments here. Ernesto says, I understand one of the biggest talking points is how deep the roster is. Is there any particular player that will stand out through the season? And well, that's what you need. And Steve's spoken about that as well. You need, guys to come out and say, you know what, you're running a 12-man rotation right now, but I need to play 30-plus minutes each game, and therefore, you've got no other choice but to bench this other guy. And that's what these guys need to do. And I think that's part of the hope with Kuminga is, hopefully Kuminga was taking that fourth-year leap and he comes out and he's a solidified starter and shows himself as a guy that needs to play 30-plus minutes. And as a result, guys like, Slow-Mo or GP2 or Loon or other guys off the bench, they get shuffled back, and some of them get DNPs and stuff like that. Unfortunately, Kuminga hasn't done that so far, and it's a weird situation where all these guys, like the Warriors are playing well. They're 4-1 through 5 games, and they're doing it by committee. So a lot of these guys are playing really well, and that's why the Warriors are 4-1. But none of them are like standing out. None of them have been stars by any means. Now, individually, game by game, yes, like Draymond was the star today. Yesterday, it was Buddy Hield and Indy Waters. Buddy Hield was the star in the first two games. So I guess, okay, Buddy Hield's been the star so far, but even he had a quiet performance against the Clippers on Sunday and then doesn't shoot the ball overly well here, albeit he had 21 points. So I don't know. There's a lot of guys playing well, but no one that's really demanding 30 plus minutes. And that's a bit of a problem because I think at some stage the rotation does need to be shortened somewhat. And you need guys who are demanding themselves to play 30, 35 plus minutes. You look at a guy like Pods today, he played 38 minutes, but that's out of necessity because there's literally no other point guard on the roster. And Steve already said post-game that, some of the lineups in the second quarter, there were no ball handlers out there, no playmakers, and it kind of things got stagnated offensively, which allowed the Pelicans to get back into the game. The Warriors were kept to 20 points in that quarter, and the Pelicans kind of climbed back from a 12-point deficit to get in front. I do think, like, I was looking at that stage where there was kind of a Pelicans run in the second quarter. I think Kuminga was on the bench, and it was a period where I thought, okay, this is where the Warriors need another go-to scorer, a guy that you can give the ball to and he can go get your bucket or force the defense to double team and then get some open looks elsewhere. That's why the Warriors need a second star. Now, it was only a brief period and they got things back going in the second half. But again, I would still, like, I'm looking at this roster and yes, it's a positive start, 4-1. But I still do think if you want to be a deep playoff team, if you want to be a championship team, you probably need another go-to guy because things are only going to get more difficult against better defenses in the playoffs, as we saw briefly today in the second quarter, where the Pelicans, I thought, did well to really turn up the heat defensively, and as we saw against the Clippers going back to Sunday as well. All right, we've been going for over 41 minutes. I'm going to finish it up there. Thank you very much for those of you that have tuned in on the live stream. This will be available to watch afterwards, either on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., wherever you get your podcasts. Again, thank you very much for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that'd be greatly appreciated. You can follow me at POK252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter, also on Instagram and TikTok, Golden State with the mates. I'll probably be back a couple of days off here with the Warriors not playing till Saturday. I might be back on Friday for a preview episode, before that 5-game road trip and specifically against that game, before that game against the Rockets on Saturday. But until then, enjoy the rest of your week and go Warriors. 4-1, going well. Second in the West. Let's hope it continues.